So did you ever write that blog post that you were talking about?
No, no, sure
Why
didn't.
not? And what was it about? Remind me.
Uh, I went on a trip to Florida and I committed to only doing programming and work stuff using a little folding pocket-sized keyboard, my phone, and then a pair of augmented reality glasses. And so I set up a Linux environment on my phone with desktop windows and everything, and used used just that as I was traveling. And the goal was to try this because I don't think many people have tried this kind of thing before, at least not with a phone, and then relay my experience and tell people about that. And no, I did not write it. I mean, I wrote a lot of it, but did not finish
Why did you not finish?
because one, I had a hard time creating and enforcing a hard deadline. It is one of those open-ended things where it could be longer or shorter, I don't know. It could be better, it could be worse. So I like have an unknown amount of time that needs to be put into it, and I need to reach an arbitrary quality threshold. But then also there was so many kind of hitches or things that didn't fit the narrative that I had kind of set up for myself in my head beforehand. Like I was secretly hoping to be able to say, this is so amazing and you should totally do it and look at this cool thing that I've done. But a bunch of stuff kind of didn't work out like I wanted it to. And partway through the trip, my phone updated itself and removed the root access that I needed for all of this to run. And so it wound up being this huge pain, and I couldn't fix it while I was on the road and had to wait till I got home. So that was just messy. And then things were like not working quite the way I envisioned. So I think my preconceived narrative that I was going to write about got a little bit interrupted, and that made me unsure of how to go along with it. And so yeah, I never really got over the hurdles and it remains unfinished.
Okay. Well, I don't really have a secret agenda here to embarrass you or give you a solution. I just I was reminded of that because I had this sort of side project idea of not really side project, just I was thinking, oh, I could do a little like check-in video, like a vlog style YouTube video of what I'm working on. And it was just sort of this thought. I was like, oh, I could do that. And then I sort of, half-assed, like prepared for it, set up, some camera stuff, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'll do it for real later, and
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't done it at all. So it seemed to fit the category of what you were doing with the blog thing.
Can I slightly redeem myself with something that I wanted to tell you about this week anyway?
Yeah, sure.
So a couple weeks ago, you were talking about how you have this newfound love or direction of sketching or creating these, you call them 5-minute sketches with this technique that you've been working on. I don't really remember the details exactly, but you had created these
Sounds
things.
fancy, sure, yeah.
What's that?
That makes it sound fancy and like I have it figured out. So sure, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So fancy technique, I can't remember. But you're making these real quick. You had put them up on Etsy, I think, and had been selling some and just tried to get through the full cycle of create a thing, put it out there, and make it super minimal and quick and don't care about it too much, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I was trying to think about that and how is there some version of that that I could do because it seems like such a appealing and potentially healthy thing that I just never have the opportunity to do. Most of the stuff that I'm working on has a multi-year time scope. So I was thinking, what's the equivalent of building something like a software thing, or the like sketch equivalent of that. So last week I was lifting and I was trying to calculate a 1 rep max, like based on a set. So basically I did a set of deadlifts, a set of 3, and I'm trying to estimate, what roughly a equivalent wise, what does this set of 3 equate to like for a 1 rep, or what kind of 1 rep max could I expect based on my current set? I did a great job of explaining a simple concept in a complicated, clunky way. Basically, I did a set of 3. I want to figure out, based on this set of 3, how much can I lift if I were to do a 1 rep. So I went online and looked for a calculator. These things are very common. It's very simple. There's these different formulas to estimate it. But the internet sucks now, and everything is just blog spam, SEO garbage. And the actual calculators that I was finding were kind of buried in the midst of, this ad thing and article and junk. But they either didn't say what formula they were using, or they would only use one, and I kept getting different results from different ones, and I was getting frustrated. Like, this is stupid. I just want to see what the number is, and I want to see it according to these different formulas. So I had this idea, like, hey, here's a specific need that I have. So why don't I do an experiment and see if I can create something and put it out there into the world within 2 hours? So the goal was to build some kind of calculator thing, publish it in 2 hours. And uh, I did it. I published a website, and it only took about 7, which I think is pretty good considering it's
That,
my first try.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and a lot of what took a while was like figuring out like boilerplate stuff, like how do I buy a domain and associate that with a static site, and how do I work Cloudflare's dashboard. So in theory, I could do it a lot faster if I were to do it again. So I made a website. I took every single formula that's listed on Wikipedia and made it calculate just every single one of them all on one page. So you just plug in a number and it shows you every single formula and the result. I was like, cool, that's what I wanted, and now it exists in the world. So that
That's
was my
awesome.
software sketch, and that was very fun. And it's simple, and I don't care too much, and I feel pretty happy with myself.
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I, with the time frame being short like that, and it was the same with me. I did all those little drawings in like a week or something, or
Mhm.
a couple days. It was like I did them before they became a part of me, before I cared about them.
Right.
It was
Right.
just discovery, make stuff, see what happens, go list it, sell it. The
Yeah.
same thing with you. It was 7 hours or a day or two or something. It's not. You don't have time to build up some sort of inner narrative about it. Like if
Mhm.
you had just started writing the blog post, about the trip within a and tried to get it out within 2 days, you probably could have done it and not
Right.
psyched yourself out. Uh, just
Yeah.
a thought of
No,
my thinking.
and that's why I brought it up, because the blog post was supposed to be a simple thing, but I wound up caring about it a lot, and the caring is what broke it, and I was unable to do it. So,
Yeah. I can feel that happening to me with just putting out a YouTube video because
mhm.
my genius thought was, oh, I'll just do like a real quick turn on the camera and talk for 10 minutes and then I'll overlay some stuff or whatever. Maybe I'll do that every month to just keep it real low key. And that was about a week ago, and all I've done is think about it and not done it at all. And the low key part of it, it's hard to plan something that's low key, you know? Like
Right.
I'll just do this thing that's totally off the cuff and I won't even care. But if you wait a long time, then it cannot be that. It cannot be something you don't care about. So, yeah.
I think you have to accept the fact that if you turn on a camera and you talk to potentially thousands of people, being low key, you are doing an impression of yourself being low key and careless. You aren't careless. Nobody gets up in front of a stadium to talk to everybody and is just at ease and unconcerned, at least no normal person. If they appear that way, it's because they're doing a really good impression of someone who is at ease and unconcerned.
It's kind of like walking on stage, in a giant stadium or something, but all the lights are off and you just
Yeah.
try to pretend that nobody's there.
Mhm.
That's kind of what it feels like, I think. But
Do
anyway,
you want to
I
do you want to workshop that at all and maybe try and figure out how to make it happen, or is that not what
it
you're
would
interested
be
in talking about?
I do this and you do the blog post. But I mean, I'm scared to say
we
yes.
could
But yeah,
we
let's
could
do
play
it.
chicken here as far as
Yeah, screw it.
publishing
Let's do it.
things.
I don't care. I gotta put out a video by next week, and you gotta do a blog post. And we're not gonna overthink it. My video will probably suck, and your blog post it'll probably be pretty good. But
It'll probably
yeah,
suck.
let's do
No, lean into it. That's the whole
it.
thing.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's good or not. It just needs to be out there. So
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
1 week.
so next Sunday at whatever time, 7 your time, I have published a blog post that is accessible to the internet on this thing, and you have published a YouTube video on whatever you're publishing a YouTube video on.
I'm writing this down as if I won't remember this. But
Right.
yeah, I'm gonna do it anyway. Sunday, 7 o'clock YouTube video, and you have to do blog post. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
That'll work.
Cool.
Um, yeah, I don't even want to make a big deal out of it. That sounds good. Can we talk about the video I sent you?
Yes.
Because I think it feeds into all of this.
I agree, and I have been interested and excited to talk about that too. Why don't we start with you describing to everyone this little clip that you sent me that we've been kind of thinking about for a week now.
Yeah. Okay, but it'll end with you giving a more in-depth description of it.
We'll see.
I don't know how I came across this video. It's very short. Apparently, it came out like 11 years ago and has like 15 million views. So clearly, I'm a little late to the game in watching this. But it's some sort of, I don't know, psychological study of this. The title is really weird, like children change their behavior to appease adults or something ridiculous like that. But I don't really care about the title. The video it's 2 minutes long. It's Can you just describe it? Because yeah,
Sure.
I feel like you'll do a good job.
Okay, but hold on, I gotta fix my lights because it is 4:45.
Okay, I'll try. So there's this lady, there's this little kid. He's what, like 4 years old, 3 years old?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely single
3-year-old kid.
digits.
Right? Yeah, 2, 3, 4 years old kid. He's like just out of baby stage, probably.
Yeah.
Still kind of in baby stage. He's sitting at this table, and there's the psychologist or the lady or whatever, and she's getting the baby to play with this toy. And it's just she's very formal about it, kind of, but she's getting this baby to play with this little box. She's like, "Oh, what is this?" And the baby's smiling and grabbing the box and looking at it, and the lady's like, "What's inside?" And the baby reaches inside and just smiles real big. He's so happy, and he's just looking at this little toy.
This
And
video
it's
gave
just
me so much anxiety too, by the way. Like this whole part, I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen to this baby?
a sweet little perfect kid. He's just smiley and happy, and he's looking at this little toy. And then this other person walks in the room, and this is an experiment, right? So they set all this stuff up, but another person walks in the room, and she sits down next to the first lady, and the first lady grabs a different toy and starts like showing the baby the different toy, and the baby's still looking on or whatever. the she takes the toy and then shows the person who just walked into the room, the third adult, and the third adult like yells at her. She's like, "That's really aggravating. That's stupid. That's annoying," or something like that. Like she's yelling. And the baby just, or the little kid just kind of freezes. And then the first lady gives the toy to the kid, and she's like, "Here you go. You can play with it," or something. And the kid is just paralyzed. Like he just completely frozen. I mean,
Yeah.
he feels too scared to play with the toy. So he's just sitting there like staring at it and staring at the adults, just doesn't know what to do. I mean, it's just
And the angry person, they called her the emoter. She even left the room, and so she's gone, and the kid is still in this frozen state.
yeah. And yeah, the kid is just stuck, just totally frozen solid, and it's very sad to see. Even though, I mean, if you think about it, like your first impression is sort of like, "Oh my God, this is child abuse. This is horrible." And then you think about it, and you're like, "No, it's just a kid growing up, and the parents are fighting." I mean, this is
Mhm.
it
And
happens
to
all
be
the time.
clear, the angry person was not angry at the kid. She was,
Mhm.
expressing her annoyance at the other test administrator, not the kid. So they're not even directing it at the kid. I had the same
Yeah.
feeling. I'm like, is this okay? I don't like this. I don't think you should do that to little kids. But
Well,
you're right.
I mean, nobody thinks that, but
Yeah.
They're just thinking that because it's the video. But the thing is that the person's not even yelling at the kid, and it affects the kid so much that he cannot play anymore. Playtime is over. Someone has yelled, and he no longer
Mhm.
feels safe enough to play. So I want to hear your thoughts on that, or is there anything else we need to describe about that?
That's a good description of what you see. I mean, how to interpret it is, I guess, what we'll talk about, but more or less, that's what you see in the video, and we can obviously link to that. But so the first thing that came to mind, it made me think about, or no, I'm I'm narrating incorrectly. I was thinking about the video, and then this week I heard the term anchor bias, which is a phenomenon that I think we've even talked about before. I've thought about it a handful of times, but I never knew the name for it. So anchor bias is a nice term to learn. So the classic example of anchor bias is, and not even example, I think this was an experiment that was done, but if you sit somebody down in a restaurant and show them a bottle of wine and say, here's a wine, this costs $500 for this bottle, and then take it away, and then with no other implied connection or anything, you show them another bottle of wine and say, hey, how much do you think this one costs? They will guess pretty high. And if instead you show them a bottle of wine that's cheap, like, here, this one is $20. Okay, how much do you think this one is? They're going to guess much, much lower. Uh, so the term is called anchoring bias, and it's the idea that when you're in an unknown situation, the first thing you see, the first signal you get becomes your anchor, and you use that as a reference for everything else. And it makes sense. Like, it's kind of the logical thing to do. If somebody were asking me to guess at how much a bottle of wine costs, if I see a $500 bottle, I'm going to guess I'm in an expensive restaurant or whatever. And it's like the sensible thing. If somebody's showing me a $30 bottle, I'm assuming it's a cheaper restaurant. So like, it's a logical thing, but it's a very powerful mental phenomenon where your mind anchors to this information. So what this made me think about is this baby or toddler in this environment that's new. He's, they tried to make it comfortable, but he's still in a testing facility with a test administrator, and she's acting playful and fun and enjoying the toys. And so the kid is just starting to interact with things, kind of experiment or reach out into the world that he's very new to. And he gets this really powerful signal of, that's bad, don't do that. And there's no follow up with the kid 2 years later. Does this kid no longer play with toys? But it feels very risky because the kid is just doing a little experiment and getting this really strong social signal of, don't do that, that's bad, that makes people angry, it becomes scary. And so you can, I think, wind up anchoring to that in a way that's very powerful. And it's, you know a risky thing for a kid. So that was the first kind of connection or parallel I started thinking about this week.
Okay. Uh, I thought about it not in terms of children so much, and not in terms of like this kid or was this experiment okay or not or whatever.
Yeah,
Ethics are great and all, but
right,
you know,
we don't care about that.
this kid is probably an adult now. Whatever. It's too late. No, I was, and I think we talked about this last week, but I was telling you to view yourself, or the creative part of you, or the programmer part of you, or this was a couple weeks ago,
Hmm.
the part of you that likes to create things and whatever. So for me, it'd be, my artist self. I was telling you to try viewing yourself as a young kid. So there's you, and then there's the artist you, or the creative you, which is a young kid that can't speak or communicate with you in any way. But recently, that's how I have been trying to view my
Mm.
artistic self, or whatever. Sounds weird, but it's been really kind of a giant epiphany for me to view it this way. So I've been thinking about my creative self as this little kid, like the kid in the video. And for years, I think I have been like the conscious me. I have been the angry parent in the room. I've been the angry lady, the second lady that walks in, yelling not at the tester, but at the child. I've been an abuser to my inner artistic child. Uh, this type of terminology is exactly what The Artist Way sounds like, the book. But if you think about it, think about yourself as a little kid creating things, and then think about you caring so much about the outcome, or caring so much, how well you do or how you're perceived or whatever. You're constantly yelling at your inner creative self that's just a little kid. And what does the kid do? He becomes completely paralyzed and frozen solid and can no longer create. And then what do you do to fix that? You yell at him more. You're so stupid. Just fucking do it. Just be good by now. You've done this 100 times. Just do it. And every time you buckle down on that, it just stops moving. And I remember the face of that kid in the video, and it's like, that's how I have felt because of the way I have treated myself. And so part of just the last, I don't know, 3 months or so, and I've been talking about it on here a bit, is I've been trying to retrain the way I treat my inner artistic child, inner artistic self, creative, whatever. Call me crazy. I don't care. Um, and it's been completely changing things for me, I think, without jinxing
Yeah.
it. It's been quite a while, and viewing it this way has helped me tremendously, I guess. And so watching this video is like a perfect scene playing out of what happens internally. And it's just, I don't know. That's how I was viewing that.
I have I think probably everybody listening is pretty here for it. We spent a long time talking about the inner game of tennis, and we still talk about it, and how that's just, for both of us, I think, a pretty eye-opening way of viewing yourself as these two parts, and there's this somehow inner part that's non-verbal, or like the non-explicitly thinking part of you that you have to kind of almost personify for its own sake, and then treat in a way, or create an environment for this thing, this version of yourself that is conducive to growth and performance, and all of that. And like, it's a very strange feeling way of looking at it, but the more I've thought about it and experimented with it, the more I think, yeah, this feels pretty spot on. And there's a lot of different formulations of that kind of dual persona relationship. And it sounds like, the artist way and all that is another look at it, or you called it kind of a sequel. But I think we're all pretty into it. There's when I think about that for myself, I I think back to high school tennis, where I played competitive tennis in high school all 4 years, and in the final year, I had kind of risen up through the ranks and was, supposed to be the second ranked player on the team. We had a number one player who was phenomenal and even went pro for a while, but I was supposed to be the second one. And so I had been developing my skills and doing pretty good. I was practicing a lot, and I was actually getting pretty good at the game, or at least I thought. But I would have so much trouble during a match. I would play somebody who just, on paper, should have been a far worse player than me, and I would struggle really hard. I would, go up and then choke and have trouble closing and all these things. And it ended up just being a really messy season for me. But I remember I was playing doubles with the number one player. So he was extremely good, very competitive, and I'm just kind of having to hang in and do my best. And we had kind of a mixed season. We'd won some and lost some, but we were at the regionals playing for a spot at the state championships. And we were, I think we had gone through, we had like played one set, we were down, and things weren't looking great. And, I was just kind of the typical level of struggling with my own game and making errors that I felt like I shouldn't make, and doing all of the things that I would have said are exactly what you should not do now. Just punishing yourself, and every time there's an error, whether it's justified or not, it's like, you suck, man. What is your problem? Why can't you make that? And this is my dialogue, and it's intense and it's abusive and all this stuff. So we're just starting the second set, and Joey, my partner, he says, "Hey, man, you know that we're gonna like try our best, and I sure hope we come back and win, but this is a really tough team. So this could be the last set that we ever play together. So just like let's just go for it. Let's just make it fun and you know, just leave it all out there, right? Nothing to nothing to lose at this point." And for whatever reason, that just like clicked something in my head. Where it's like, okay, yeah. Forget all that. Forget me just, screaming at myself internally and everything. I'm just gonna play. And we lost. I actually don't remember if we split sets or not. We might have played two more sets. I can't remember, but we lost. But it was the best tennis that I've ever played in my entire life by far. And even Joey was like, "Holy shit, dude, you're good. Like this is like where was this?" I mean, it was like apparent to myself and to him and to people around. I was like, wow. And we played out of our minds, made it a fantastic match. Didn't quite make it, but I mean, who knows, right? One set, maybe two, can't remember. But if I could have been in that mindset for the entirety of the season, I wonder what that would have looked like for me. Certainly would have been better than it was. But just as a general observation, I wish I could have matured a little bit earlier or just recognized what was really happening, because at the time it felt so appropriate and justified to just brutally punish myself internally for every error, for everything, just like constant serious negativity. And you would, well, some people would, most people would never do that to another person. If you were coaching a player, you wouldn't be like, "You suck, man. You're terrible. Why'd you screw that up? Like, what's your problem? You always do this. You're gonna lose again." Like, you would never have that dialogue with a player. But for some reason, it felt, no, it's me. It's my own brain. It's fine. Like, what's the problem? And that's the problem, is that it had the same result. So anyway, that's something that stuck with me a lot, and I've thought more and more about as we've talked about this kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. And I think part of it is that if you think about that second self or self two or whatever in a
Yeah.
game of tennis, which fitting that you have a tennis story for it.
Right.
If you think about that second self, the subconscious, the whatever, the creative person, the competitive, whatever, the more instinctual person, if you think about that entity as you, then you feel obliged to be a total jackass to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it's you, you can be really mean and awful. But if you think about it as a different entity other than your conscious self,
Mm-hmm.
it's much easier to be kinder to it. It's much easier to think about a child version of you as deserving uh, care and love and attention. Because who the hell wants to be mean to a child? Um, right? So if you think about that entity as a child and it's separate from you, it's like the
Mm.
child version of you that you've left behind a long time ago. It's like, what do you need? How can I make you more comfortable? How can I nurture you and make you feel safe? And when you think about it like that, yes, you might come off as a little insane, but if you think about it like that, it really helps and things become a lot more clear. Like, oh, getting really angry that this turned out bad would be a bad approach to take.
Yeah.
But if you consider yourself the parent of this creative entity inside of you, um, it's a lot easier to manage. And so if you start getting frustrated and getting annoyed with the fact that nothing's happening, or the outcome is not coming out the way you want it, it's like, okay, how can we go make this kid happy? What would make him happy? Would it be going for a walk or listening to some music or taking a break or, I don't know, getting some sleep or whatever? Like, it's just a child. Um, Logic and reason do not really matter to this.
Yeah.
child. Anyway, that's been really helpful to me.
Yeah, I think what also has helped me a lot is the it's kind of one thing for us to talk about it and say, "Oh, you should treat yourself better inside and you'll be better and do better." And it's kind of like one of those things of, eat your vegetables and drive the speed limit and whatever. And it's kind of easy to be like, "Sure, whatever." But if you can really observe it happening in real time and feel like it's a replicable, observable phenomenon that happens and works consistently, then that really changes things. And I'm sorry, but I have to talk about this again. I've been playing Elden Ring for weeks now, and it's such an amazing way of getting to observe this in a sort of low stake sort of way where I'm playing this game. It's very hard. It's boss oriented. So you're walking around exploring the world, and then you hear the music and the boss bar appears, and now you've got some giant asshole that has a million health and is gonna smash you in one hit, and you got to figure out how to beat him. And it's it's such a difficult thing that you have to get through. Um, it's also very fun and rewarding, but that part of your brain, like having to learn things and remain calm and not start to panic when certain things happen, or not to make the same errors over and over, not to allow yourself to approach things in a sort of random way, but like always be learning and observing and slowly piecing things together. Like it takes a particular mindset, and I talked about this before, but I had taken attempts at this kind of game before, or even just, I don't know, difficult games like this, and would struggle for those same reasons that I described. Like I struggled in my, high school tennis career. It's because I would just get upset and I would get angry at myself for like, oh, I should be better. I thought I was a smart person and a good gamer and whatever, and just all of that, like weird identity things cropping up. But this time around, especially having gone through this process a few times now and having a much more in my mind, like a better mental model for my own mentality and like way that I learn, it's it's just been so wonderful and so nice. I for the most part have, I wouldn't say easily, like I haven't breezed through the game, but it's just, I get to a boss that's like really hard and spend a little while trying to figure it out. And I'm very patient. I'm never expecting myself to just go in there and beat it first try, and, making all these observations. And I can start to recognize, oh, I'm getting tired. I'm not really thinking very well, or I'm making the same mistakes. I should get up and move around and relax and go do something else and then come back to it when I feel a little fresher. Or sometimes it's just, hey, I need to sleep on this. And when I wake up, I bet I'll be in a better spot. And I do, and almost always beat it right. Like all that stuff feels so tangible and so observable that I'm like, yeah, this is how you do it. I mean, any other way would be a huge mistake and a waste of time and wouldn't be very fun.
Yeah, you're playing. You're,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
playing a game, and that's it.
Which is funny because I'm sure many people are like, yeah, dude, it's a game. It's supposed to be fun. If you're raging, it's not. But, you know, talk to all the other gamers I run into. It seems like there's a lot of that. So yeah, I had to kind of get to it in my own way. But yeah, it's really fun, and it's fun to like feel like I can get better at stuff.
Well, okay, so it's it's easy to understand if you imagine yourself yelling, at a kid,
Hmm.
right? That would be bad. So you can kind of, settle on, well, don't yell at yourself. Don't get mad at yourself if you want to be in a playful mode, which you
Yeah,
really need to be if you want to be firing on all cylinders in any discipline, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
But it's not just anger, and it's not just that sort of inner verbal abuse that you give yourself. There's other things too. Think about it. Think about a baby or a 3-year-old playing with some toys, and then imagine yourself, holding a camera right in front of their face and just recording them playing. And then after playtime is over, you say, "Okay, kid, let's go watch how you did." let's review how you did everything. See how you smiled right here? You looked kind of stupid, so don't do that next time. Or
Yeah.
you were a little slow right here, so next time try to be a little faster. Good job, but we can do better next time, or whatever. So you're like reviewing things and making the kid very self-conscious about itself,
Hmm.
which feeds into the Batman effect, right? Where the further you are away from yourself,
Right.
the
Right.
better you do. And so that I've noticed this and I've talked about this before, and it lines up perfectly in that if I do a really good piece of art, afterwards I am tempted to sort of worship it in the way that, like, yes, I finally did something good. I can feel good about it. And I just look at it and like, I'm finally good. I've worked so hard and I can
Hmm.
feel good about this. And if I wrote a good song in the past, I would listen to it and think, yes, finally, I am this musician that I've always wanted to be. And then, the next day I wake up and you have the opposite effect of, oh God, I was so wrong. I'm such an idiot. It sucks and it always sucks, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you go down that roller coaster. But if you can learn to just, write a song or do a piece of art or write some code or whatever, create a thing, and then just go to the next thing, let it go, and forget about reviewing your own work, which goes against
Mm.
everything that uh, society and culture love so much. But it really plays tricks with your mind if you're constantly reviewing what you've done. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am very happy you brought that up because that's a fantastic point. I remember when I was teaching a lot, one of the things that I started to get, I didn't even really think about it explicitly at the time, but it was something I just developed, was uh, this intuition for when you're interacting with someone, especially if you're good and you're being observant, you recognize what helps somebody and what doesn't. And one of the things I realized pretty quickly was that obviously, if someone were to play a piece of music, say they had practiced it that week and they were playing it in front of you, obviously, if you were to get angry and yell at them, that would be a crappy thing to do and probably not help their confidence and not set up a good learning environment. And most teachers have made it that far, at least. You don't hear a whole lot of yelling and verbal abuse from teachers. At least it's certainly frowned upon. But I think what is much more subtle is the fact that any kind of connection from the person's identity to the music they've played is probably detrimental. And there's this tendency or like desire to kind of praise the person and say, "Oh, that was great. You did so good. You're really good at this." Like that's a mistake. Almost always that's a mistake. Because one, it obviously implies the inverse. If something can be great and you did a great job, it implies that you could do bad and you could do a bad job. But also, it's just leaning into the fact that it's kind of like putting the camera in their face. It's like, you did that, and we should think about how you're doing and how good of a player you are and the identity that is starting to form up around this. And it's uncomfortable. And it causes that person, I mean, it can cause them to withdraw and start to feel like, okay, yeah, even if they aren't, thinking of it that way. But it also just creates way too much, even if it doesn't feel like a negative thing for them, even if they love it and they're basking in it, it still creates that unhealthy relationship with the thing where like they're thinking about themselves, not objectively the performance that just happened. It's much harder to just sit back and say, or it's at that point it becomes harder to just passively observe the music that they've played and what was good about it and what wasn't. But the more detached you can make them from that, the more you can just sit there and act as if you're two people sitting shoulder to shoulder, just kind of observing something and being smart about this worked well, but this was weaker. And I think, this phrase would work better this way. And, let's try and, work out the fumbles or the uncertainty around this area. Like just thinking of it that way, like a just a painting in front of you or just this thing, is so much more powerful and puts them into so much better of a headspace that it ties into this, like the way you're interacting with your inner self or whatever you want to call it. it's not just anger. I was kind of like saying that, but you're right to point out that that's like a pretty simplistic way. Any attachment from like your inner self or like what you're doing, the thing you're trying to be good at, any attachment from that to your identity or your own performance is, in my mind, like something you just want to avoid much as possible. And just stick to like having fun, enjoying the process, looking at the thing you're doing and fixing what can be fixed and just like having a good time. But any of those thoughts around identity are detrimental, I think.
One of the reasons why I I think is that it, going back to the like parent-child relationship. I mean, if you really, it's weird, but think about yourself as the parent, the part that you can hear and your consciousness, whatever. That's the parent, and then the creative self, whatever, as the child. And the reason why you can't be too overbearing it is because it doesn't allow the child to be who they are. And that is something you cannot control no matter what. I can't control what type of artist I really, really am. Uh, you can feed it certain things. I can try to go in certain directions. But at the end of the day, like if the inner artist child self to me isn't that into it, or it's not clicking, it isn't a comprehensible input, then it doesn't matter how much I want it as the parent to be that way, it will not be that way. And so thinking about it as a parent child relationship really seems to help.
Yep.
And so it's like, how can I set this child up to succeed? How can I give them what they need and what they really click with and what they're really truly interested in? How can I give them all the pieces so they can succeed and I stand back and just let them be? I'm here to support. It's a weird
Mhm.
thing, but
No, I completely agree. And just as a sort of side point or another thing to think about, I one thing that I think is often very underrated is the element of time and the way that affects things. So the if you kind of imagine this child as, a toddler who wakes up and is excited to do stuff and is interested and starts playing and having a good time. Um, After 2 hours, the toddler is probably fatigued and starts to get cranky and starts to fixate on things and, loses that. I know that not every toddler is this way, but whatever, in this formulation, this is how it kind of works for me. But there's a time component, and the the nature of that inner part of you changes as time progresses, and recognizing when it's a good time to really get at something and bury yourself in it, and then when it's a good time to maybe take a break or work on something else, or even recognizing that, hey, actually right now today is not the time to tackle this thing or this boss fight or whatever. That might work better when, this inner part of me is like more awake or less fatigued or
right.
whatever. But
the
just
child
understanding
the
the time
child needs a
component.
nap. Or the
Yeah,
child
yeah,
needs a
the
nap.
child,
Yeah.
sometimes very literally, or at least to sleep on it, and other times it's like, okay, we've been doing hard stuff for a while, and it's time to do easy stuff and to chill and, whatever that is. But the time piece is something, for whatever reason, if you're doing physical activity, if you go out for a run and you get tired, you feel it. Nobody struggles to recognize when they're tired after, running however many miles. But for some reason, when you're doing mentally taxing things, almost the opposite seems to happen, at least for me, and I think many others, where you get tired and you have trouble stopping and you have trouble letting go. And you can't even
Yeah.
really recognize that you're fatigued and tired. I still don't really understand what's happening there, but that seems to be the case. And you have to be pretty aware, and bring a lot of mindfulness to the situation to say, I'm struggling with this and I need to stop. I need to just relax and do something else and come back to it later.
I think it's the self one, the consciousness just it really wants to achieve this thing. It really wants to beat that boss in the game. It really wants to finish this painting or this drawing or whatever. And it just sits there on a loop. and it's like, I'm not giving up until this is done. But your artist self or your self 2 or whatever is not capable of doing that right now. And it may not even be the most frustrating thing, but you're still stuck in a
Right.
loop. And it's like you just can't let it go. If, yeah, if someone comes and interrupts that, that's you get really angry at that
Yeah.
because it's like you're just latched onto it. Okay, so we're talking about treating this child well and all this stuff, and you said it's hard to just do that. You almost have to experience it happening in order to know really what we're talking about,
Mhm.
and I agree. um, the Artist Way book presents two ways, uh, more than two, but two fundamental ways of engaging with that, or practicing that in a very clear way. We've already talked about that, but one of them is what she calls morning pages, which is you write 3 pages, stream of consciousness in the morning, every morning. I've been doing that for 2 or 3 months now. Could not recommend it more, but not everyone will do that. And number two is going on what she calls artist dates, which is you take that child on a play date, and you take them somewhere. I mean, literally, you try to think about it like this,
Mhm.
and you step back as the parent and say, "What do you enjoy? What do you like to do?" So today, I went on a walk with that mentality. Is it because I try to do an artist date, every week, where you're literally specifically setting aside a couple hours where you're just sort of focused on what makes the artist part of you tick. Well, what are you attracted to as that artist? And so I went on a walk today with that mentality, and it was amazing. And it's interesting. It helped me get out of um, the sort of frustration that I had built up, whatever. Um, have you said you did this, right? Or you tried doing this? I can talk
Well,
more
you
about it, but I wanna
yeah.
hear
Well, you made me do this. I went to Powell's for a
this
few
right, the book.
hours. Yeah,
Yeah.
the bookstore. Um, I I've done a few kind of shorter bouts where I'll leave my phone and go for a walk and things like that, which is nice. Nothing quite as large a block of time or as big an event as that, but I enjoy that so much that I would like to do it again. The morning pages, there's been a few people who kind of yelled at me for being hesitant to do that. Uh, so point totally taken. I'm still not quite at a spot where I want to dedicate myself to that, but it seems super cool. But the date
Yeah,
thing I'm pretty into.
okay. Well, I'm not gonna sit here and try to convince you to do the pages, and I don't think that's the only way to, like, achieve, nirvana or whatever. It's just it's it's set up in a way that really seems to help. But,
Yeah.
okay, forget about the morning pages. If you wanted to practice, playtime with your artist self, um th can we come up with a few examples? Okay, so let's say you're a pianist. One way to practice, let's say you're really serious and you really want to write music and be really, really good. Um, One way to practice like this method of learning how to play around and bringing that to everything else, I would say try setting up like 20 minutes or 30 minutes where you sit down and you practice overcoming uh, the inner critic where you call yourself stupid for playing something. So you sit down at the piano and you start playing around. When your brain starts saying, "No, that's stupid," playing "Mary Had a Little Lamb" when you've been playing for 20 years, uh, playing that would be very stupid. You practice overcoming that. And so you play it anyway. Or you want to play some kind of scale and then try to play it backwards or whatever. Your inner brain will say, "That's stupid. Don't do that." And you practice overcoming that and doing it anyway. And I
Yeah.
guarantee you do that 20, 30 minutes a day for a week. After that week, when you go back to normal stuff, you will be much more inclined to overcome your criticizing self. You'll feel much more able to play around and feel creative and not judge yourself so much, and it will open up uh, the playfulness again, just like you with the tennis match.
Mhm.
Um, it's a way of practicing the playtime, not trying to play the most amazing thing ever, and not reviewing that segment of time either. So that 20, 30 minutes where you're playing around, you're not recording it. You're not writing it down. You're not trying to remember anything from it. You're just playing around for playtime's sake. So
Mhm.
that would be an example for a pianist, but it would work for anything. And that's
Can
what the morning pages are. But for writing,
Mhm.
I've applied it to drawing as well. So I have a sketchbook where I'm just doing like kind of stupid things. Sometimes it turns into really good drawings or whatever, but I try not to review it, try not to look at it. It's just a thing where I play around in.
Can I offer a idea of my own that is slightly a non sequitur, but it's somewhat related? There's this thing that I was playing around with this the past few nights because most nights I play a couple hours of Elden Ring and try to beat a few bosses and whatever. And I was having so much trouble with this one dragon who was just a total asshole and very frustrating to fight. And so I started thinking about this and I decided to go into the fight and make it my objective to simply count how many times I had to hit him before he died. And so I would go in and just I'd whack him twice and then die. I'm like, okay, two. And then I would get there and like I just count, okay, I hit him again, that's seven, and then I would die. And within just I'd probably fought this guy 20 or 30 times, but once I started doing this, within a few attempts, I just beat him. And again, I know no one cares about me playing Elden Ring, but it's it's been very interesting to me to play around with my own mental state and my own just mentality as I play the game. And what was interesting about just the very simple technique of trying to count things or count how many times I had to whack him was that it shifts your entire perspective. Where my goal was to count, and it turned out to be very hard, actually, because your mind is so excited and kind of hyper thinking or like a little bit hyperactive at the moment. And so just remembering what number you're on winds up being difficult because your mind keeps wanting to jump ahead or jump back. So say I whack the dragon for the fifth time, my mind immediately starts thinking, five. Okay, five. Pretty soon it's going to be six. And then I will have hit him six times, and then maybe seven. And wait, how many times did I hit him? Was it four or five? Or was it six? Are we already on six? And it's like my mind can't stay zoomed into the present moment of I hit him five times, so it's five. And then I'm going to wait and look for the opportunity and then hit him again. And it's six. And it has like causes me to recognize like how jumpy my mind is, where it's constantly too far ahead or too far back. And so getting it to just like calm down, like just think about five. It's just five. Now watch the dragon, wait, remember his move set, wait for the sequence to end, run in, hit him again. Okay, that's six. And the other thing it does is it brings a lot of perspective where most often the mistake I would make was just being too greedy, where I think I have a window, and so I decide to hit him twice or maybe even three times. And then sure enough, that's too much. He turns around and just kills me and I'm dead. And you're like, oh, I almost had it. I was about to hit him like a bunch of times and do so much damage. But when you realize that you have to hit him 40 times to kill him, and then you're really thinking like, I could hit him once or I could hit him twice. Twice puts me at serious risk of straight up dying. It's just not that important. I got to hit him 40 times. I just got to chill. It brings all this perspective to it where now you're like, okay, hit him. Cool. I'll wait around for another hit. And it works so well. And I went through a few bosses like that. I'm like, this is so nice. And I think honestly, it could be almost anything, but introducing something to like let your mind kind of sit on and just observe that's outside of the intensity of the situation, or those moments of panic, or the identity thoughts where you're starting to think I'm doing so good, I'm doing so good. Just giving yourself that is like this peaceful little thing to like occupy your conscious self, and it just works so well. So I know that's not exactly what you're talking about, but in general, just experimenting with the mentality that you have, like the meta experiment of how you're sitting down to do something, has been such a powerful thing for me and very enjoyable that I just think it's something everybody ought to be doing.
No, I feel like I could ramble on about this stuff for another 4 or 5 hours because I have found that same thing in a lot of like the different drawing techniques. I don't even really know how to explain it, but let's say I'm holding a pencil and I go to draw the fairy or something, right? I'll I jump around so much. I'll do like a perspective, and then I'll do like a gesture, and then I'll do like graphic shapes, and then I'll do anatomy, and then I'll do lighting or something. And I'm always like bouncing back and forth and going all these different directions, and it gets really frustrating sometimes. But in the little sketchbook that I started where I'm just playing around, I use a ballpoint pen. And with the pen, you kind of just have to go straight to the finished result, right? Because there's not a lot of you can do a light line and kind of sketchy stuff, but
Mhm.
you're most of the time you're going straight in, and just whatever you're putting down is what stays. And it's like total zen. You'd think it'd be more, higher pressure because, oh my God, it's
Mhm.
permanent. But really, it just puts your mind on this little singularity of a line, the end of the pen, and it's just pointed, and it's calmer. And yeah, you screw up and it'll look bad sometimes or whatever, but weirdly, a lot of the times I end up drawing better in that book because
Yeah.
of the pen. But it's like, oh, for finished stuff, I'm too afraid to do that. So I go back to the madness and the chaos with the pencil where I'm like kind of scatterbrained. Not
Yeah.
not always, but it was just an interesting like you'd think more or more freedom would be calmer, but actually, making the decision in that single line like permanent,
Mhm.
it's calming in a weird way.
It makes me think about that exercise that I was doing in, I can't remember the name of the book, but like a little, noob artist book. But you have to draw a portrait. And so you start by just seeing a picture of someone or a drawing of someone. You just like have to copy the picture and it's horrible. And then you do the same thing, but the portrait is upside down and you have to try
Mhm.
and replicate it upside down. And it comes out dramatically better when it's upside down. And you're like, what the hell? What is going on? And it's, I mean, you can explain this better than me, but just even for me, it's when it's upside down, you aren't seeing it like a face. You're seeing it like just lines and relationships between lines and shapes. And you're looking at a line and thinking, I think this is about a third of the way through the page. So I'll draw it, right about here. And it seems like it intersects a line right here. Like you lose the narrative and the symbolism of it, of a face, and you're just seeing exactly what you should be seeing, which is the basic shapes and proportions and relationships. And so in a way, like introducing ways of kind of getting your mind to think that way and actually removing a little bit of the narrative of it and the intensity and the fact that you're doing something and it could be good and it could be bad and you might succeed or fail, and just like thinking about it in these super literal terms, I think can like actually draw your attention to the right things, and it puts you in a very sort of present state of mind where you're just seeing the things that you need to be seeing and just not having this strong emotional relationship to them.
That's exactly how I did all of those quick little animal drawings
Yeah.
that I started selling. Is 80% of the drawing was done without me looking at it. And what happens is like your conscious, the parent self version, it has to relinquish control to where you're
Mhm.
just going. And then it can look down and be like, okay, the baby's getting or the kid's getting too close to the road, let me move him back over. But then you have to let go again.
Yeah.
And your hand just moves. And so when the picture's upside down and you're copying it, you can't be the over controlling parent. You can't be like, you need to be a good artist because if you're not, you'll look really stupid.
Right.
You don't know how to judge copying lines. So there's nothing to judge. And so you're able to just relax. The kid takes over and just does it. I think we need to stop it here because I will just keep going all night long.
Okay. Well, we'll be back next week. We can talk about it then if you want. I'm happy to. This is pretty interesting to me, and I've definitely been on a kick of just like playing with my own brain a little bit and been having a lot of fun. So I'm down. But
Anybody wants
also,
more? Well, if anybody wants more stuff, read The Inner Game of Tennis and The Artist Way.
yeah, the Inner Game of Tennis. At least I have not read The Artist Way, but the Inner Game of Tennis is super short, super easy read. So recommend that. Um, and you and I, we just made a pact. I publish a blog in 150 whatever hours, and you uh, publish to the world a YouTube video. Doesn't matter what it
Yeah.
is, doesn't matter how long it is, doesn't matter if it sucks. Just has to be done.
Agreed. I don't want either one of us to even care about it being good. We just need to get it done. Sounds good. Okay, see you next week.
All right.